This is the first in a mini-series of videos drilling down into antediluvian technology. As I work to expand the borders of this project, I have a hunch that exploring the technology of this world will make an above-average impact on all future designs. In the previous video, I touched on the idea that the Watchers shared secret knowledge with humans in the hopes of accelerating their corruption. In Dead Gods, I'm suggesting that while this knowledge did, in fact, speed mankind's doom, it also helped to kickstart civilization. Humanity went from white-knuckling flint spears as they hid in the mud from dragons, to vast cities and globe-spanning cultures within a handful of centuries. Our protagonist, the shipwright, is on a perilous final quest to collect what useful knowledge he can before the end of the world. The first of the technologies I want to explore is glass. This is a material we rarely associate with anything prehistoric, so I think it will give us a lot of opportunities to get some really neat visuals that we couldn't get with any other technology. There's one issue we need to look at first. Some might be tempted to say, actually, glass is fragile, so in this dangerous world, it wouldn't be practical. Yeah. I believe that pure pragmatic practicality is highly overrated.
It's not practical.
I don't care!
Additionally, in the previous video, we've laid the groundwork to introduce secret knowledge from fallen angels. That gives us some wiggle room. With that out of the way, glass is an incredible, collaborative craft. Here I imagined an oversized piece being blown by a Nephilim glassblower. He rotates his pipe as a triceratops is led onto some hastily repaired bellows, inflating the glowing hot glass bubble. His assistants stand by to close the heavy furnace doors, adorned in thick leather heat shields. On the right is a partial mold used to rotate the glass sphere to a specific size and shape. Having the help of a giant craftsman allows them to create thicker, heavier pieces, which adds strength. They can also put the glass through a tempering process, carefully heating and cooling the pieces to create compression on the outside and tension on the inside. And, for a little extra storytelling frosting on top, I'm working with the assumption that their inspired glass recipe, as well as the different atmospheric conditions in which they work, make this glass stronger than our modern equivalent by default. Another interesting technique would be something akin to sapphire glass. In this case, the crystal is grown in a vat, starting with a crystal seed. The molten material is kept at very specific temperatures until it becomes a crystalline column. This is similar to how silicon ingots are formed. While this material can have an incredibly high hardness, it can also be brittle when it's thin. Again, assuming some Watcher-inspired recipe adjustments and assuming they use their diamond-coated tools to cut it on the thicker side, it could be a good material to work with. There's one other option for strong, see-through materials that I wanted to touch on.
Transparent aluminum?
That's the ticket, laddie.
It'd take years just to figure out the dynamics of this matrix.
Yes, but you would be rich beyond the dreams of avarice.
What was once science fiction is now reality. Aluminum oxynitride is a transparent ceramic made of aluminum, oxygen, and nitrogen, poured into a mold as white powder, compressed, and heated. So now we have a handful of plausible enough ways to introduce a few transparent and durable materials into the world. But of course, glass isn't just useful, it's also beautiful. There will, of course, always be a place for the large batch, everyday use glass. Sometimes you need 1,000 identical cups or 5,000 identical window panes. But artistic glass gives us a small hint as to just how spectacular artisanal glass may have been, especially in the hands of master glassblowers with centuries of experience and experimentation behind them. In fact, the more I researched glass, the more daunting it became. As I continue to design characters, architecture, and props for this project, it is going to be a massive challenge to push the limits of what's possible. Shapes should be more dynamic, colors should be more vibrant. The only real limiting factors will ultimately be my own skills and the needs of the story. Turning towards applications, I like the idea of wearable glass, as seen on Shamsiel and one of his Nephilim daughters at the beginning of this video. Here, I wanted to try an earlier set of armor, something a bit more minimalistic and unapologetically He-Man. Large glass forms are set into iron like jewels, protecting the body without obscuring too much hard-earned physique. Glass also provides an interesting opportunity when designing helmets. No need for eye slits when you're able to see through a fully protective visor. I also wanted to dig into the idea of glowing glass. Uranium glass has a vibrant green color and glows, but only under ultraviolet light. And yes, it is radioactive. Tritium glass glows without the need for UV light. And yes, it is also radioactive. Thankfully, with the assumed vitality provided in the antediluvian period, they should be fine. Yeah, they'll be fine. Wearable glass doesn't have to be limited to armor. Glass beads offer a ton of design opportunities as well. In this instance, the dancer wears a costume of glass beads. With sufficient strength, glass beads could also be used as another form of armor, almost like scale mail, not just strung together, but also sewn onto fibers and leathers. And hey, they can be infused with radioactive materials too. Why not? Imagine a crowded street at night in a large city, looking like deep-sea phosphorescent creatures. Once we allow for radioactive glass, it unlocks a few cool possibilities. One would be passive defense systems to keep predators at bay. Scary faces that can be seen in the dark may be enough to scare off a range of nocturnal predators. These passive lights could also be used to help mark roads and trails, or in more nefarious instances, be used to lure travelers into ambushes. Glass is an interesting material when it comes to observing creation. At zoos and aquariums, or behind the tempered glass of a vehicle, we can calmly observe the behaviors of predators that would otherwise have us cowering in the dark. This safe house would be an emergency refuge to travelers in case a dragon or other large creature showed up. The thick glass dome not only offers protection, but it also gives the inhabitants of the antediluvian world the chance to watch and learn about the giants that hunt them. It's a huge advantage in their ongoing push to not just survive in this world, but to thrive. While I'm on this subject, I thought it would be fun to try another approach. This time, something like an aquarium wall, but made from colossal cast glass stones. Huge pieces of glass like this would require an incredible amount of polish to get them to be transparent, let alone to fit together. While working on this image, I started to think even more about the pets some of the Nephilim might keep, like the escaped Quetzalcoatlus from a previous video. Or, in the future, this motif could actually be used for a giant aquarium, offering more of a glimpse into the sea life of this world. Another idea for a passive defense system would be to have giant glass dragon spikes. What if some dragons were similar to birds in that they had difficulty recognizing glass? Create some large enough spikes and it would be a frustrating deterrent that also lets more manageable animals in without harm. I'd also like to explore the use of lenses. The world is riddled with ancient ruins that were built in ways that were very intentional about tracking the night sky. Perhaps there are opportunities to imagine that what ruins we do know about were really the foundation for something even more interesting. They're not just grinding and polishing lenses, but perhaps mirrors also. There are a lot of neat options when combining those elements. With the right controls, you can focus the sun's rays to heat water or burn a dragon's hide from a distance, or in this case, using a giant mirror to simply bounce sunlight into an otherwise dark section of a palace. And since we're introducing mirrors to the mix, I love the idea of wearable mirrors. Glass scale mail backed with silver. I imagine that in the wilds, while many humans might pick it out as being odd, there are many animals that would be more easily fooled. Lastly, there's a cool glass motif that I think would be fun to use, and that's Fulgurite. In some rare circumstances, lightning strikes a beach and flash fuses the sand into lightning bolt-shaped tubes of glass. I like the idea of this being carefully harvested, and in some cases maybe even polished for decorative use. One specific use came to mind, and that was for a watcher that I'm inventing for this story. Covered in Liechtenstein scars, his missing eye replaced with a rune-engraved copper prosthetic. Fossilized lightning wings would be used to communicate this watcher's primary monkey's paw gift to mankind, electricity. But we'll have to continue designing him in the next video, which will focus on the place that electricity will have in the antediluvian world of dead gods. You can help this project. Click the buttons, leave a comment, go to my website, buy a book or a print, follow me on stuff, sign up on Patreon. Thank you all so much for the support you've already shown. It's been overwhelming, and a special thank you to my Dragon Tier patrons. Thanks for watching, I'll see you next time.